Okay, this is a VFX production slash Oppo i7 review. It's quite a fairly handy device. Although I wish it had more flexibility in what it produces, but maybe no beggars can't be choosers. Let's see. Well, where to start? Okay. So the battery is long lasting. This is at least 2014 when this came out, so this is 2 or 3 years ahead of some of the phones they've just released this year that are similar but not quite as good, like the Oppo versus the OnePlus 3 that I saw an advert for the other night, with a 30-minute charge. It says can last all day. Well, mine comes with 3 power options, and on average, for me, a full hour's charge fills up the phone completely on supercharge and lasts several days, and can last twice as long with super saving mode. It has a 50 megapixel camera, a 24 and a 50 megapixel camera. And if you want it on standard, you can have also the standard. And most phones I've seen only go up to 20 megapixels. There was one. So that's just pretty good, and it shoots full HDR and RAW files. Although I checked the RAW file data, and usually RAW files have a bit depth of 14 to 16, while this one has a standard of 11, a DNG 11 file. Which I found quite strange. Unless, I'd have to have a look at the, was it Sony? Trying to remember that one I used at uni. Oh no, it wasn't Sony. It was Canon 7 and Canon 7A, I believe. I think they shot in RAW, but I think it was a higher bit depth. Although I don't know what the permutation color values of it are, so it might be higher. But then again, usually they're lower with a lower bit depth. At 72 pixels per inch. And the phone has a 2K screen, which is pretty good for 214. Better than any iPhone at the moment, both charger wise, speed wise, color, and camera wise, and cheaper too. Films in full HDR 4K and HDR HD, that's full 32-bit. But when taking pictures with HDR, it only a medium dynamic range, not a full HDR, or at 24 bit. Which is strange that if it can record in full 32-bit, which I guess is good for professionals like me who have a full 32-bit monitor, while most TVs 4K TVs only go up to 14-bit depth, like the new curved sub-white pixel TVs and stuff only go up to 14, maybe 16-bit tops, which is quite a real shame, really, because they're not displaying full HDR. They're lying to their customers, trying to just sell it as HDR when it's nowhere near. It's to be medium dynamic range, it has to be at least 18 to 24-bit or higher, and it doesn't even reach that. So, although it's good compact for pictures when I do the 50 megapixels pixel shots at 8K resolution, saves as a JPEG, which is strange because you would think it would save it as a TIFF file. But the bit depth for that is only 8-bit. You would think it would give more flexibility and have like 24-bit or 16-bit, and you can't change that in the camera settings. But as for the degradation, the color degradation, the color permutations or gradation is something to try and find out more. That they usually usually goes with the bit depth. So the higher the bit depth, the higher the gradation. Good for night shots, though. Could be better with the panos. Yeah, especially the 4K at night if you want to film like a horror scene or something. 4K, full 32-bit. But, because that takes so much render power, more than a standard 32-bit, like an 8 or 14-bit 30. Then it wouldn't be true HDR if it did that, but I wish it had the option to change the bit depth so the rendering would take less time, if you know what I mean. So I have a choice between 10, 14, 16, 18-bit depth. That would have been a bit more handy instead of having to convert it in post in in After Effects or Premiere Pro or Speed Grade, which you can change the lookup tables in Speed Grade for, which is why that is used to change the HDR files. Although if you're doing a pano, I'll have to check pano, see if I can, because I think the panos were full HDR. No, maybe 24. I'll have to get back to you on that one. So I can render that in like Nuke or something with a full 3D pano to create a 3D environment. Doesn't shoot for radiance files though, which was quite interesting because you'd think radiance for full 32 bits. Yeah, they kept it quite compact. Gives me a different, because when I have a look at the metadata for its 8K shot, it says bit depth is 24, 72 per inch. But JPEG, because usually JPEG is a photometric file, not a photometry, not radiometry, not radiant file, photometry file. That means it loses, it doesn't contain as much data, it's lossy instead of lossless, or lossless instead, I forget which way around it is. I wonder why, because when I look in the metadata, that's what it tells me when I right click on the picture, but when I go into Bridge, it tells me it's only 8-bit depth. Something wrong there. Yeah, the charger cable is a lot more stable. Some sort of color OS, and I've looked up and it stated it adapts the color to be less hurtful on the eyes, straining on the eyes. It gives you certain options to change it, which I thought that's not too bad, isn't it? But as a VFX artist, yeah, the panos don't seem to be too bad. Yeah, and the HDR shots, if I wanted to do traditional panel where you take the shots individually and then stitch them together, which I did for my original VFX project at the end of uni, that gives me more flexibility over getting an entire 360 shot. Let's see. There was something about the make of the CPU and the quad-core CPU that people think it's faster than when my standard one, my standard computer, this one, versus this is several years older than this one. But when rendering, first off, my Acer Aspire has gone through a lot more battering from viruses and stuff, and so still survived to this day over well over 6 years now. While this one, questionable but still surviving. I might be able to hack the cores in this one, in the 16GB one, to do a virtual render farm within the same machine, because usually a physical render farm you would need to apply lots of graphics cards to the same machine to increase render time and to have more than one render. Well, there's some sort of code I found that I will try out where you can hack the CPU and render out more frames at a time. So instead of doing a 30 frame shot full HD high dynamic range pano shot in Maya and render out all the particles and visual effects work into an image sequence for compositing, instead of it taking a week to render out that I don't know, 3 minutes sequence, it will only take like maybe a day. But there was a lecture about how more cores actually slow down the computer. I'd have to reread it because it's been over a year since I watched it. Because I've noticed this one has better sound quality. This one has like the this one has 5.1 surround sound with really, I'm trying to remember what they're called. Cine surround. There was, what was it called? Dolby Home Theatre sound system, which is 1,000 times better than what the sound system is in this one. I remember plugging this one into my subwoofer, and it would be louder than a 800. I can't remember if it was 800 or 8,000 megawatt speaker that my friend had in his, that he put into the kitchen when I was at uni, and he would turn it on, but mine, even though his was the size of the wall itself, it was a huge speaker. It was the size of him. This thing, when I plugged this into my monitor, and my monitor plugged into my speakers, it would be like 10 times louder than what his was. And mine just was like a fucking disc. He couldn't believe it. The look on his face, it's fucking hilarious. This one though, not so much. Yeah, this one was much more professional. And the display driver on this one keeps cutting out on me and then re-establishing itself for no reason, while this one doesn't do it as much. Although I have seen this upgraded to 16 gigabytes, so could work. Then it would be equal to that one, but the graphics chip in this one would be better with the RAM. i7's okay though. i7 for this one's better than i5. But I think Windows 7 was much more stable. Plus this came with full LED and LCD display, full HD, while this one that's supposed to be the younger version, they're both full 32-bit depth, which is pretty good, but for some reason this one's only 720. But plugged into my full HD at 50:1 contrast ratio is better than 4K at the moment, so at full 32-bit depth display, until they actually release a proper 32-bit depth 4K at 120:1 contrast ratio, which won't be existing for another 5 years. There's no point. So the one I have is pretty damn professional. Although I wish I had my old speakers with the SRS speakers. They were a lot more proficient than them ones for this one. But I'm gonna try and connect it to my old home theatre sound and see if it still gives the same results or better result than this one, because the sound on this one is not as good as this really old one, which is like 10 times better. It's like a super hack. Although it might be the VLC, because the old VLC could be hacked, and you could change the you could change the VLC to like 300 to 400%, while now it's defaulted at 100%. So that might be one reason. Yeah, 400% on the speakers. Yep. My old camera that I haven't used in a while, that was good for night shots. That, I think, was 24-bit depth as well. Yeah, it was 24-bit depth, but it was TIFF file, not JPEG, because JPEG is photometric, not the other one, not 32 bits. But the quality wasn't as high, so it makes you wonder what stuff have they adapted into it to make it better. Because and my Pioneer Blu-ray is pretty good with the quality, because that shoots out 32-bit depth when playing those kind of files, because I had a re-rendered 4K what was it? Battle Los Angeles movie, and retained the color of 4K in HD. So when I played it on my deep color Blu-ray player, it was the equivalent, and it will play similar to like HVEC files for that kind of advanced encoding for file formats. So you mastered in 4K, and yeah, so you have deep color and you have true color. Deep color is higher than true color, so it extended 4K color onto a HD format, plus a 50mm:1 contrast ratio, which is higher than IMAX. So, because actually, there's 3 types of IMAX. It depends which one. If it's the one at Nottingham that I've been to, it's the same. But if it's laser printer, it'd be higher. That's why I like my subdivision media player. Re-rendered file formats in HVEC. Actually, no, the 4K version they've released can play HVEC. Although the one I have at the moment, the Subdivision 4, doesn't. But still plays ridiculously good quality coded files. But if you have the +2, they both have their strengths and weaknesses, because the +2, unlike the can play badly coded metadata files and play them really smoothly, better than what VLC can play them. And you would see quality is really good. This is, I don't know, can you see that? There you go. Yeah. Which I, to my disappointment, didn't play those AVI files and as smoothly as its previous one I had. But this one retains really high quality for much more smoother ones. Maybe they've changed it. Maybe they've adapted their latest one for 4K to have both features from the previous from this one I have and the previous one I had. Hopefully, but technology has. Tried. A bit of indigestion. And the game mode is okay on my monitor. That's why I prefer monitors over TV. You get so much more quality over stuff, especially if you're a professional, like a professional effects designer, VFX production artist like me. Comes more in handy. Or even in the medical profession. They're the kind of people who get it to test it out first. And I've been recording on this phone. Yeah, this is the Oppo standard 720. Pardon me. I haven't tried HDR image-based lighting in 3D Max. I'm gonna try and do cross-comparison, compare between 3D Max, Maya, Nuke, maybe Unity. I've seen some decent things in Unity for it. Don't know if ZBrush does it. I know it does subsurface scattering for realistic skin renders, light renders for creatures and stuff, and I've done a bit of that, but I don't know if it actually does if it actually does HDR. It wouldn't surprise me, because usually it's more proficient in handling more data consuming stuff. And also test out different renderers, so Maya 213 test out and see what V-Ray does versus Maya 216 using its standard mental ray. Oh yeah, and V-Red, which I've seen some really decent stuff in that, because you get real-time renders like in a game engine where you can test it out in real time. And gives you real-time feedback without slowing your computer down as much. We'll see. And yeah, Oppo also released a second version of their products last year, right? Yeah, it was last year, but there wasn't. I doubt they've done too much adaptation from this one though. I think it was the Oppo 7R. Yeah, and I had a look and it looked quite flimsy. There's this weird camera thing they had at the top that I didn't quite agree with as much as the one I am using now. Don't know when I'm gonna get into trying to finish my 3D creature off before, because then if I do a new creature, then I can put it in my 3D environment and test it out more. I want to do the one I lost over in January.